Like and subscribe and click the bell icon to get new video updates.
Should I stay or should I go? After two major floods in little more than a month, Lismore is facing an existential crisis. Should residents stay or go, and where? Joel North is sitting on a steep staircase like a ladder that takes you up to the bridge where a captain would steer the wheel of a ship. But this is no sea-going vessel, it's the house Joel and his wife Anita have been building since 2012, bit by bit on the Wilsons River in North Lismore. Their dream was to make their home flood-proof. So we repitched the roof and then put a level in there and had a deck so we could get out if we ever had to, says Joel. He climbs the ladder to a very special room built a full 14 meters above the ground. That's roughly the height of a semi-trailer standing end on end. This room in the roof cavity is the family's flood refuge room. If there was a big flood in the house, then we could get up and sleep here. That's not the only modification. We've got bookshelves up high, pretty much at the ceiling. We have hooks in the ceiling, so our lounges, our mattresses can all be suspended. Joel and Anita bought this place for just $170,000 and have worked on it ever since, says Anita. We've spent 10 years sort of crafting and sanding and building and dreaming, and it's like this running joke with everybody when they come to our house. Is there a new deck now, or like, another room? In 2017, when a huge flood did come through Lismore, their hard work paid off. It totally works. Yeah, we saved everything. We didn't lose a thing that flood, not one thing, says Joel. Background Briefing is daring narrative journalism, Australian investigations with impact. Listen for free on the ABC Listen app, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, or your favorite podcast app. But in 2019, their idyllic life by the river was shattered. And not by a natural disaster. One day while Anita was pregnant with their little boy Heath, Joel had a sudden seizure. He was diagnosed with brain cancer. Doctors gave him 2 years to live. That was 3 years ago. Surgeons removed a golf ball-sized tumour from his head. The procedure temporarily paralysed the left side of Joel's body and left him with a limp. That limp was with him when in late February this year, storms upon storms saw the Wilson River rising quickly again. It was Sunday the 27th when Anita and Heath moved to higher ground and Joel began moving things higher up in the house. We have phases in our flood strategy, explains Anita. Phase 1, water over the slab under the house, okay, lift it above that. Phase 2, water above the factory space, we also work from home, lift it above that. Joel kept moving things up, just as they'd planned. We kept getting more and more updates, and it was like 10 meters, then 11 meters, 12 meters, it must have been like 2 o'clock, it said 13 meters. And I was just so exhausted and started stacking things higher, but the water was already in the house. My stack started falling over and I was just like, I'm going to sleep, came up here, slept for maybe an hour. Joel woke and realized he too was about to go underwater. He called Anita, and she told him it was time to leave. He called me and I said, honey, whatever you've saved is enough. And he just went quiet on the other end of the line. And then he started crying and he said, I haven't saved anything, it's all underwater. And I could picture him there and how exhausted he was. Joel was standing in a foot of water, in his flood refuge room, in the house they thought was flood-proof. He mentally froze. I had to talk him through putting a life jacket on because he was having such a panic attack, says Anita. Put your phone in your bag, paddle our canoe from the roof of our house to our neighbour's house. Get to people. Joel had recently bought a lightweight kayak that he'd stashed in his flood-proof room. He'd even built a small gate on the side of his uppermost deck. He opened it, kicked a floating fridge out of the way, put his kayak in the water and paddled away. Joel, Anita and 2-year-old Heath are now staying in a house in Ballina lent to them by friends. The one thing they know for certain is they can no longer live in their Lismore home, says Anita. Now I'm sort of dreaming up more like a buyback situation where possibly the government is able to buy back these places and we can use those funds to try and start somewhere else. Something similar happened in the tiny southeast Queensland town, Grantham. The government offered residents blocks on high ground after the devastating 2011 floods. So far, Lismore's mayor has rejected calls to relocate the town's CBD to higher ground. Whatever happens, the fracturing of the community adds another layer of loss for its